Nobody moved. The park was packed. Families with dogs, couples taking photos, joggers with headphones. Dozens of people saw the boy fall, and nobody moved. I moved. My body reacted before my brain, my muscles responding to an instinct I thought I'd lost years ago. I dropped the plastic bag containing my possessions, everything I had in the world, 3 kilos of misery, and ran. The water was so cold it burned. I dove headfirst, my eyes wide open in the murky darkness of the lake. I couldn't see anything. The water was mud and algae and centuries of filth, but I could feel it. The displacement, the disturbance, the direction of despair. My hands found fabric first, his coat, thick and soaked, pulling him down like an anchor. I gripped it tightly and pulled up, my lungs already screaming for air, my legs kicking against the water that seemed to have turned to concrete. When we broke through the surface, the boy wasn't breathing. No, no, no. I swam to shore with him, one arm around his chest, my legs working harder than they had in 5 years. The crowd was now at the edge of the lake, because of course they were closing in now that someone had already done the dirty work. I dragged the boy onto the grass and turned him on his side, my fingers trembling with cold and adrenaline. Water gushed from his mouth in waves. 1, 2, 3, and then he coughed. The most beautiful sound I had ever heard in my life. He coughed and choked and vomited more lake water, and I held him on his side, my hands on his back, whispering words I didn't even understand myself. That's it. That's it. Breathe. Breathe. You're okay. Everything will be all right. His eyes snapped open, dark brown, wide with terror. They focused on my face with an intensity that pierced me. He choked, coughing harder. My chair. Of all the things he could have said, he was most concerned about the chair. Don't think about that now, I said, still holding him. Just breathe. But I need her. His voice was a whisper, hoarse with tears and panic. I can't go on without her. I can't. Hey. I cupped his face in my hands, forcing him to look at me. You're alive. That's what matters. We'll deal with the wheelchair later, okay? He nodded, his lips purple with cold, his whole body trembling. That's when I realized I was shivering too. The December wind cut through my soaked clothes like blades, and the adrenaline was starting to wear off, leaving only the brutal cold in its place. Did anyone call an ambulance? I shouted to the crowd surrounding us. Shocked faces stared back at me. No one answered. Call an ambulance! The fury in my voice made them recoil. He almost died. A woman finally picked up her cell phone. Others began whispering amongst themselves, pointing at me, at the boy, at the lake. I ignored them, focusing only on the child trembling in my arms. What's your name? I asked, trying to keep him conscious. Sasha, he stammered. Alexander, but everyone calls me Sasha. Hi, Sasha. I'm Zara. You were very brave. I wasn't brave. His eyes filled with tears. I was stupid. Dad told me to wait, but I wanted to go alone. And then the chair slipped and... Shh. It was an accident. Accidents happen. Dad is going to be angry. Dad will be relieved that you're alive. Sasha looked at me with an expression that seemed too old for her childlike face. You don't know my father. Before I could process that response, the sound of tires screeching on the asphalt cut through the air. A black car, no, 3 black cars, had skidded into the park entrance, completely ignoring the no vehicles signs. The doors swung open simultaneously, and men in suits emerged like ants from a disturbed anthill. They moved with military precision, sweeping the area, creating a perimeter, pushing back the crowd with an authority that clung to no question. And then he appeared. He stepped out of the middle car with controlled urgency, each step measured even in his haste. Tall, over 6'3", with broad shoulders and a posture that transformed his impeccable suit into armor. Short, dark hair, a jaw that seemed capable of cutting glass, and eyes. It was her eyes that captivated him. Light blue, almost transparent, like ice on deep water. Eyes that scanned the scene in milliseconds and found what they were looking for. Sasha! His voice thundered through the park, and I felt the boy shrink into my arms. The man crossed the distance between us in seconds, falling to his knees on the grass beside us. Up close, I could see the lines of tension on his face, the panic barely contained beneath the surface of control. Sasha, look at me. Her hands flew to her son's face, checking, assessing. Are you hurt? Where does it hurt? Talk to me. I'm okay, Dad. Sasha's voice was small. The lady saved me. Those icy eyes turned to me for the first time. I must have been a vision, soaked, smelling of lake water. My tangled hair stuck to my face. My clothes, already miserable before, now completely ruined. The face of a homeless woman, which is exactly what I was. He examined me with that calculating gaze, cataloging every detail of my appearance. There was no disgust in his expression, which surprised me. Just a cold, methodical assessment. "You pulled him out of the water," he said. It wasn't a question. "Yes." "Why?" The question caught me off guard. "Why was he drowning?" I replied, confused. No one else jumped. His eyes darted to the surrounding crowd. All these people watched and did nothing. "Why did you jump?" I looked at Sasha, who was watching the exchange with the intense attention of a child learning something about the world. "Because I know how to swim," I replied simply. "And he doesn't." Something flickered in those icy eyes, something I couldn't quite put my finger on. "Daddy," Sasha interrupted, her teeth chattering. "I'm cold." Immediately the man took off his own coat, an overcoat that probably cost more than anything I had ever earned in my life, and wrapped his son in it. "Victor," he called without turning around, and one of the men in suits materialized beside him. "Bring the car. We need to take Sasha to the hospital." "Yes, Mr. Aristov." Aristov. The name echoed in my mind, familiar in a way I couldn't quite place. The man stood up, Sasha in his arms, and looked at me, still sitting on the soaked grass. "You're coming too." "What?" "You swallowed the same water as my son. You need to be examined." "I'm fine." I started to stand up, my legs trembling. "I don't need—" The world spun. My legs gave way, and I would have fallen face first to the ground if strong hands hadn't caught me. "You're not well." His voice came from somewhere above me, laden with something that could be irritation or concern. "Victor, take her." "I can walk," I protested weakly. "You can't." It was a fact, not an opinion. "Victor." Arms lifted me off the ground as if I weighed nothing. I tried to protest again, but my body had decided it had cooperated enough for one day. The world darkened at the edges, and the last thing I registered was Sasha's face looking at me over her father's shoulder, an expression of genuine concern in her youthful features. "Will she be okay, Dad?" "Go ahead." The man's voice was absolute. "I'll make sure of it." I woke up in a room that was too white, with lights that were too bright, and the unmistakable smell of a hospital. My whole body ached, my muscles protesting the effort of the rescue, my throat scratching from the lake water, my head throbbing with a dull pain. But it was warm, dry, clean. I looked down and discovered that someone had dressed me in a hospital gown, which meant that someone had undressed me first. Shame burned into my face. "Ah, you're awake." I turned my head and found a smiling nurse checking the monitors beside the bed. "Where—" My voice came out like sandpaper. "Where am I?" "Central Hospital. Private ward." She wrote something on a clipboard. "You gave us a scare, moderate hypothermia, plus a respiratory infection that was already developing before the dive into the lake. When was the last time you ate a real meal?" The question made me look away. "I don't remember." The nurse sighed, but there was no judgment on her face. "There's a man waiting to see you. He's been here since you arrived, 6 hours ago." 6 o'clock? "You slept well. Your body needed it." She went to the door. "I'll say you're awake." I tried to sit up, but my arms trembled with the effort. When the door opened again, I was still half reclined, probably looking as miserable as I felt. Nikolai Aristov entered as if he owned the place. Perhaps it was. The private wing and the attention from the medical team were starting to make sense. He had changed his clothes. Another impeccable suit, dark blue this time, but there were shadows under his eyes that hadn't been there before. Had he really spent 6 hours in the hospital because of an unknown beggar woman? "How are you feeling?" he asked, stopping at the foot of the bed, as if she had been run over by a truck. The corner of her mouth lifted slightly. It wasn't quite a smile. "Sasha wants to see you. She hasn't stopped asking about the lake girl since she woke up." He tilted his head. "But first, you and I need to talk." His tone triggered my survival instincts. "About what?" "About who you are." He pulled up a chair and sat down, crossing his legs with the elegance of someone accustomed to commanding meeting rooms. "I did some checks while you were sleeping. My blood ran cold." "Zara Moraes," he continued, his eyes fixed on mine. 31 years old, born in São Paulo. Former Olympic swimmer, 2 bronze medals in Beijing 2008. Favorite for gold in London 2012 until— "Stop!" I pleaded, my voice choked with emotion. He didn't stop. "Until the car accident 6 months before the Olympics. Drunk driver. Your coach died at the scene. Your fiancé became a quadriplegic, and you, he paused, spinal cord injury. They said you'd never walk again, but you did. You just didn't swim. Why are you telling me this? Because I want you to know that I know who you are. His icy eyes were merciless. I also know what happened afterward. The depression, the medical debts, the fiancé who ended the relationship after 2 years because, according to him, you were no longer the woman he had fallen in love with. Something akin to contempt crossed his face. The loss of the house, the job, everything. 3 years on the streets, living off charity and scraps. Each word was like a knife. I wanted to scream at him to shut up, but my voice had disappeared. The woman who jumped into that lake, he concluded, was an Olympic athlete. Her body still remembers the movements, even if you tried to forget. You didn't save my son by chance. You saved him because you had the skills to do what no one else could. Silence. Finally, I managed to speak. What do you want from me? He leaned forward, his elbows on his knees. Sasha was born with a degenerative condition. Doctors say it's genetic. 1 in a million. He lost the ability to walk at age 5. You'll lose more function over time unless we find treatments that don't yet exist. His voice was factual, but I could see the pain hidden beneath the surface. What he hasn't lost is his stubbornness. That damn stubbornness that makes him want to do everything on his own, to prove he doesn't need help, that he's more than his wheelchair. He wanted to go down the ramp alone, I said, remembering. Even knowing it was dangerous. That's what he does. He constantly challenges himself. And none of the caregivers I've hired can keep up with him. Either they're too afraid of upsetting me to set limits, or they treat him like he's disabled, and he pushes them away. How many caregivers did he have? 8 in the last year. 8? The last one lasted 3 weeks. Sasha put pepper in his coffee. Despite everything, the pain, the exhaustion, the absurdity of the situation, I almost laughed. He seems intense. It's a word to describe it. Nikolai Aristov studied me with that X-ray gaze. You saved my son's life. You jumped into a frozen lake without a second thought. And he likes you. He barely knows me. Sasha decided he liked you the moment you told him we could deal with the wheelchair later. A pause. Nobody ever prioritized him over the wheelchair. Not the doctors, not the caregivers, not... He didn't finish the sentence. What are you suggesting? I'm offering you a job. He stood up, his hands in his pockets. You would take care of Sasha. Not as a nurse. He has a medical team for that. As a companion. Someone who challenges him back, who isn't afraid of him or me, who treats him like a normal child who happens to have limitations. My mind was spinning. Mr. Aristov, Nikolai. The name sounded strange coming from my mouth. You don't know me. I'm homeless. I have no references, no qualifications. I have nothing. You have courage. The reply came immediately. You jumped into an icy lake for a stranger. That can't be taught or bought. What if I refuse? Then I thank you for what you did today. I'll provide financial compensation for your act, and you can go back to your life on the streets. His eyes were direct. But before you refuse, I'd like you to meet my son. For real. Not as the victim you rescued, but as the person he is. It was a reasonable proposal. Strangely reasonable. Coming from a man who was clearly used to simply giving orders and being obeyed. Why don't you just tell me to accept? I asked. You clearly have the resources to make people do what you want. Something crossed his face. Surprise, perhaps, that I had been so direct. Because forcing you wouldn't work. Sasha would notice. And he already has enough people in his life who are there out of obligation or fear. A pause. He needs someone who chooses to be with him. The honesty of the response disarmed me. Okay, I finally said. I know him, but I'm not promising anything. For the first time, something resembling relief crossed Nikolai Aristov's face. That's all I ask. He walked to the door. Rest a little longer. I'll bring Sasha when the doctors release you. He left, and I stayed there, in the hospital bed, trying to process how my life had taken a 180-degree turn in less than 12 hours. In the morning, I was a beggar scavenging for scraps in the park. Now, I had a job offer from the man who, I was beginning to understand, was probably one of the most dangerous in Dark Harbor. Aristov. The name finally clicked in my memory. Nikolai Aristov. The Tsar. The man who controlled the city's underworld with an iron fist, whose photo I had seen in newspapers and news programs, always associated with words like suspect, under investigation, and untouchable. I had just agreed to get to know the Mafia boss's son better. What the hell was I doing? Sasha came to see me 2 hours later. He arrived in a new wheelchair, since the old one was at the bottom of the lake, pushed by a nurse who had clearly been instructed to keep a respectful distance. His face was flushed with life, no apparent sign of the near drowning other than a slight hoarseness in his voice. "You're awake." He lit up when he saw me, a huge smile spreading across his face. "Dad said you slept a lot because you were sick before jumping in the lake. You were sick and you still jumped? That's so stupid." A pause. "And so cool." I couldn't contain my smile. "Thank you, I think." He gestured to the nurse, who obediently positioned him beside my bed, and withdrew. "Dad said you two talked," Sasha said, her brown eyes studying me with an intelligence that seemed too great for her 8 years. "About you coming to work with us. He mentioned something like that." "Are you going to accept?" "I don't know yet. I said I wanted to meet you first." Sasha nodded, as if that made perfect sense. "Okay. What do you want to know?" "Well," I sat up in bed, ignoring the protests of my muscles. "Why were you alone on the pier? Your father said you have caregivers." "Caregivers are annoying." He rolled his eyes. "They treat me like I'm made of glass." "Sasha, don't do that." "Sasha, that's dangerous." "Sasha, let me do it for you." His voice rose in an irritated mimicry. "I know I can't walk. It doesn't mean I can't do anything." "And then you found a way to escape your caregiver to prove a point." "Marcos was on the phone," Sasha said, without any remorse. "His girlfriend. He stays on the phone for hours when she calls. It was easy to leave without him seeing." "And what about the pier ramp?" His face closed up slightly. "I wanted to see the lake up close. From the top of the ramp you can see the fish when the water is clear." Her fingers played with the edge of the blanket. "I wasn't going to fall. I was just going to look and come back. But the wheel got stuck on a plank and I tried to force it. And then physics decided to teach you a lesson." He looked at me, surprised. "Yes, that's what happened. You were lucky I was there." "I know." His voice trailed off. "I know how to swim a little, but not with my legs like this. And the chair pulled me down so fast." "Hey." I reached out and touched his arm. "You're here. That's what matters." He looked at my hand on his arm, then at my face. "You're not afraid of me. Why would I be afraid of you? Everyone has it." The statement came tinged with something that seemed like old bitterness. "Because of my father. People pretend to like me because they're afraid of what he might do if they don't." The brutal honesty caught me off guard. "Well," I said slowly, "I didn't know your father until today. And when I pulled you out of the lake, I had no idea who you were. You were just a boy drowning. And now that you know, now you're a boy who almost drowned because he was too stubborn to wait for help." I raised an eyebrow. "That doesn't make you scary. It makes you annoyingly familiar. Familiar-like." I was like that too, when I was swimming. I never wanted anyone to help me. I thought asking for help was a sign of weakness. His eyes widened. "Dad said you were an Olympic swimmer. Is that true?" "Yes. And you got hurt and couldn't walk anymore, but you walked anyway." "That's also true." Sasha studied me with a new intensity. "How did you do it? Walk again?" The question transported me to places I hadn't visited in years. The hospital, physical therapy, the tears of frustration, the falls, the constant pain, and finally, the first step. "It wasn't just determination, if that's what you're thinking," I said. "It was stubbornness, yes, but it was also accepting help when I needed it. Learning the difference between things I could do alone and things that required other people. What's the difference? Doing things alone makes you strong. Accepting help makes you intelligent." She smiled. "Stubbornness without intelligence is just stupidity with a pretty facade." For the first time, Sasha laughed. A genuine, surprised sound that completely transformed her face. "You're strange," he said. "I've been told worse things." "No, I meant..." He frowned, searching for words. "You talk to me normally. Everyone talks to me as if I were sick or as if I were my father's son. You talk to me as if I were just me, because you are just you." I tilted my head. "The chair is a tool, not an identity. And your father is your father, not you. You are Sasha. That's enough." He remained silent for a long moment, his eyes shining with what could have been suppressed emotion. "I want you to stay," he said finally. "Not because my father wants me to, or because you saved me. Because I like the way you talk to me. Sasha, I know you didn't promise anything." He raised his hands defensively. "But I'm saying it. If you want to stay, I'd like that. That's all." His sincerity struck me like an electric current. I thought about my life on the streets. The cold, the hunger, the constant loneliness. How I had given up on being a person. and become just a body trying to survive another day. And I thought of that boy, stubborn, intelligent, lonely, in a way I intimately recognized. A boy who was fighting against a world that wanted to define him by his limitations, just as I had once fought. If I stay, I said slowly, it's going to be my way. I won't treat you like an invalid, but I also won't let you kill yourself trying to prove a point. We'll have rules, and you'll have to follow them. What kind of rules? The kind of person who says, if you want to do something dangerous, you tell me beforehand, and we'll figure out how to do it in a way that you don't die in the process. Sasha considered this. So you're not going to stop me from doing things. I'm going to stop you from doing things the stupid way. We can negotiate how to do things the smart way. A slow smile spread across his face. No caregiver has ever said that before, because they were afraid of your father. I raised an eyebrow. I have nothing to lose. Worst case scenario, he fires me and I go back to the park. It's not like my life could get much worse. You're really strange, Sasha repeated, but now she was smiling. I like you. I'm starting to like you too, kid. Brat? Take it or leave it. He laughed. Loud, genuine. The kind of childlike laughter that should be heard far more often than it clearly was. Okay, Zara. I accept. The door opened and Nikolai Aristov entered, his eyes immediately going from me to his son. I heard laughter, he said, something like surprise in his voice. Dad. Sasha turned her chair to face him. She's staying. She said she is. Nikolai raised an eyebrow in my direction. These? I said I'd think about it. I corrected myself. But, yes, I'm going to stay. I don't know exactly what reaction I expected. Relief, perhaps. Satisfaction at having achieved what I wanted. What I didn't expect was the way his shoulders relaxed almost imperceptibly, as if a weight had been lifted, or the look he exchanged with his son. Quick, but full of a tenderness that didn't match his reputation. Well, he said, his voice controlled. Then we have arrangements to make. What kind of arrangements? You need a place to live, clothes, updated documents, a bank account to receive your salary. The list made me realize how much I had missed out on in recent years. I don't need charity, I said, an automatic reflex. It's not charity. His icy eyes met mine. It's your salary. You're going to work for me. I expect to be compensated accordingly. And how much exactly would that compensation be? He mentioned a number that made me choke. Per year? I asked, incredulous. Per month. This is absurd. No one pays that much for a caregiver. You're not an ordinary caregiver, he gestured, indicating his son. You saved his life. And from what I've seen in the last 5 minutes, you're the first person he's genuinely liked in years. Hey, Sasha protested. I like people. You tolerate people, Nikolai corrected. There's a difference. I looked from father to son, seeing for the first time the resemblance between them. The same stubbornness in their eyes, the same sharp intelligence, the same poorly disguised loneliness. Okay, I finally said, but I have conditions. Nikolai raised an eyebrow. Which? First, I'll answer you on security matters, but as for how I take care of Sasha, that's my decision. If I say he can do something, he can. If I say he can't, don't argue. Reasonable. Continue. Secondly, I need to know what I'm getting myself into. I held his gaze. Your name carries a reputation. If I'm going to be a part of your son's life, I need to understand the risks. Something darkened in his eyes. You will have the information you need to keep yourself safe. Nothing more, nothing less. Third, I continued, Sasha remains a child, not an employee, not an heir, not the Czar's son. A child. He will have time to play, to make mistakes, to be normal as much as possible. Sasha was looking at me as if I had just given her the best gift in the world. Nikolai was silent for a moment, and I braced myself for him to refuse, to say that I had gone too far. Instead, he nodded. Accepted. Serious? You're asking me to let my son be a child. His voice was strange, laden with something I couldn't identify. That's not a demand. It's what I should have been doing from the start. The vulnerability in that admission caught me completely off guard. Then we have a deal, I said. We do. He extended his hand. Welcome to the family, Zara Morais. I shook his hand. Firm, warm, calloused in a way that didn't match his expensive suits. And I knew in that moment that my life had just changed forever. For better or for worse, I still didn't know. The Aristov mansion was a stone and glass behemoth perched atop a hill overlooking Dark Harbor. It wasn't beautiful, at least not in the conventional sense. It was imposing, intimidating, built to impress and terrify in equal measure. 3-meter walls surrounded the property, cameras flashed in every corner, and men in black patrolled the gardens with the regularity of Swiss watches. "It's like a prison," I said as the car drove through the iron gates. "Only more expensive." Victor, the security guard who was escorting me, didn't react. I was starting to think he was part robot. "It's not a prison," Sasha said from the seat next to her, her eyes sparkling with amusement. "It's a fortress. There's a difference." "Which?" "In prison you want to get out. In the fortress you want to keep others out." The child's logic was impeccable. The car stopped in front of the main entrance, a marble staircase leading to double doors of solid oak. Before I could move, 2 employees were already beside the vehicle, one opening my door, the other preparing the portable ramp for Sasha's wheelchair. "I can get down by myself," Sasha protested when the man made a move to help him. "Sasha," I said, and he stopped. "Let him position the ramp. You can go down by yourself afterward." He looked at me, assessing whether it was a disguised order or a genuine negotiation. Apparently, she decided it was the latter, because she nodded. "It's okay." The employee positioned the ramp. Sasha descended with practiced skill, and I followed, trying not to appear as impressed as I was by the sheer scale of it all. The interior of the mansion was unexpected. I expected coldness, empty ostentation, the kind of decor that screams, "I'm rich," without saying anything else. Instead, I found warmth. The walls were earthy tones, covered in art that seemed to have been chosen for personal taste rather than investment value. Soft rugs covered the dark wood floors, and in every corner there were small touches of life: a coat thrown over a chair, a pair of children's sneakers abandoned near the stairs, books piled on random surfaces. It was a house, a real house where people lived. "Your room is on the 2nd floor," Sasha said, already maneuvering the chair toward a discreet elevator in the corner of the lobby. "Near mine. Dad said it was more convenient." "And your father's room?" "3rd floor." Sasha pressed the elevator button. "He likes to stay high up. He says it's easier to keep an eye on him. Watch out." The choice of words spoke volumes. The elevator was spacious enough to comfortably accommodate the wheelchair. We went up in silence, and when the doors opened on the 2nd floor, I found myself in a wide hallway with several doors. "This is mine." Sasha pointed to a door decorated with planet stickers. "This is yours." The door next to it, simple, without decoration. "And this is the game room." He pushed open the last door, revealing a children's paradise. Video games, a huge television, shelves of toys, a drawing table, a reading corner with stacked cushions. "Do you spend a lot of time here?" I asked. "When I'm not in class or physical therapy or at the doctor's." His tone was too casual. "There are so many doctors, I imagine." He glanced at me sideways. "Aren't you going to ask about my illness? Do you want me to ask?" "Everyone asks." He shrugged. "It's usually the first thing." "Well, I'm not everyone." I sat on one of the cushions, positioning myself more or less at his height. "If you want to tell me, tell me. If you don't want to, don't. It doesn't change how I'll treat you." Sasha was silent for a moment, her fingers drumming on the arm of the chair. "Muscular dystrophy," he said finally. "Duchenne type. It means my muscles are getting weaker. It started in my legs, hence the wheelchair, but it will get better." The clinical coldness with which he described his own sentence broke my heart. "Do you know what that means?" I asked softly. "I know." His eyes met mine, and there was a maturity there that no 8-year-old should have. "It means I'll need more help as I get older, that eventually my arms will stop working properly too, that my heart and lungs might have problems." A pause. "It means I probably won't get old." The air escaped from my lungs. "Sasha, don't make that face." He almost smiled. "I've cried a lot about this. Now I just live. Every day that works is a good day." The devastating wisdom of those words transported me to another time, another place, to a hospital bed where I had received similar news. Not about death, but about the death of everything I knew. "You probably won't walk again," the doctor had said. I proved him wrong, but the journey there had destroyed me in other ways. "Can I tell you a secret?" I asked. Sasha tilted his head, curious. "When I had the accident, the doctors said I would never walk again. They said my spine was too damaged, that the nerves were compromised, that I should accept my new reality. But you walk." "I'm walking," I smiled. Not because the doctors were wrong about the damage. They were right. But they were wrong about what I was capable of doing despite the damage. His eyes lit up with something that seemed like hope, and then immediately went out. My illness is different. It's genetic. There's no way to overcome it with willpower alone. I know. I'm not saying you're going to get better. I leaned forward. I'm saying the doctors might be wrong about how much time you have, about what you can do with the time you have, about who you can become. What if they're right? So you live each good day with everything you have, and when the days get tough, you find ways to make them less bad. I touched his hand. But you don't give up before the fight even begins. That's not accepting reality. That's surrendering. Sasha remained silent for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was hoarse. The other caregivers felt sorry for me. You could see it in their eyes, that look of poor, sick boy. And me? You look at me like I'm annoying. I laughed before I could stop myself. Because you're annoying. You're a child. Children are annoying by definition. No, that's a compliment. She smiled. It means I see you, not the disease. Something changed in his face. A wall collapsing. A door opening. Zara, try. I think we'll get along well. I think so too, kid. The following weeks established a routine. Mornings were for school. Sasha had private tutors who came to the mansion, since Nikolai didn't trust the safety of conventional schools. Afternoons were divided between physical therapy, occasional medical appointments, and free time. And free time was my territory. I quickly discovered that Sasha was brilliant. Not just intelligent, brilliant. He devoured books on any subject, asked questions that left me speechless, and possessed a capacity for logical reasoning that rivaled adults. I also discovered that he was terribly lonely. There were no other children in her life, no school friends, no visiting cousins, no interaction with people her own age, only adults, employees, doctors, her father who worked insane hours and clearly carried guilt for it. "Have you never brought friends here?" I asked one afternoon while we were playing cards in the games room. "What friends?" He didn't look up from his cards. "From school. Before I needed the chair?" He shrugged. "I had a few, but after Dad took me out of school, they kind of forgot about me." The casual way he said it concealed a pain that I intimately recognized. "Children can be cruel," I said. "They weren't cruel. They were just kids." He finally looked at me. "It's hard being friends with someone who can't come to your birthday party, or play soccer, or do anything normal. Eventually they stop inviting you, and eventually they stop remembering you exist. And you?" I stopped waiting. The echo of my own experiences was deafening. After the accident, my friends had also disappeared. Not out of cruelty, out of discomfort. They didn't know how to deal with the broken Zara, with the Zara who could no longer swim, with the Zara who cried without warning and turned away from any attempt at help. One by one, they drifted away, until only silence remained. "Do you know what I've learned about loneliness?" I asked. "What?" "It's a choice. Sometimes it doesn't seem like it, but it is." I played a card. You can be alone and not be lonely, or you can be surrounded by people and feel the greatest emptiness in the world. And what's the difference? Connection. I looked at him. Loneliness isn't about the quantity of people. It's about the quality of relationships. One person who truly sees you is worth more than 100 who just surround you. Sasha studied me with an intensity that I was beginning to recognize as her way of processing important information. "You see me," he said. It wasn't a question. "I see. And my father?" The question caught me off guard. "What's wrong with your father? He sees you too." Sasha looked back at the cards. "It's different from how he looks at other people. When he looks at you, he pays attention." The heat rose up my neck. "Your father is my employer. He pays attention because he wants to make sure I'm doing my job. That's not all." The boy shrugged. "But it's okay if you don't want to talk about it." Before I could answer, and honestly I had no idea what I would have said, the door opened. Nikolai Aristov entered as he always did, commanding the space with apparent ease. He was still wearing a suit, but his tie was loose and his sleeves rolled up to his elbows. He looked tired in a way that probably only Sasha and I could see. "Dad!" Sasha exclaimed, her face lighting up. "You're back early." The meeting ended earlier than expected. Nikolai walked over to his son and ruffled his hair, a gesture of affection that seemed both automatic and genuine. "How was your day?" "Zara is teaching me how to cheat at poker." I raised my hands in defense. "I'm teaching probability and how to read facial expressions. It's educational." The look Nikolai gave me was unreadable. Educational, he repeated. Life skills. I held his gaze. If he can bluff well enough, he'll do very well in negotiations when he grows up. She said I have a natural talent for lying, Sasha added cheerfully, because my face doesn't show what I'm thinking. Wonderful, Nikolai sighed. Exactly what I needed. A son who knows how to bluff. You're bluffing all the time, Dad. That's different. Why? Because I'm an adult. So when I'm an adult, I can bluff? When you're an adult, I might not be here to complain anymore. The phrase came out too casually, and I saw the exact moment Nikolai realized what he'd said. His eyes darted to Sasha, checking to see if his son had grasped the implication. Sasha had understood. You will be here, he said, his voice small. You promised. Something broke on Nikolai's face. A crack appeared in the armor he wore like a second skin. I promised, he agreed, bending down to be at his son's level. And I always keep my promises, even the difficult ones, especially the difficult ones. Sasha nodded, seemingly satisfied, but I had seen the fear in his eyes, the fear of a child who already knew what it was like to lose people, that I had already lost my mother in a way that no one had told me about. It's dinner time, Sasha said, changing the subject with the skill of someone practiced at avoiding painful topics. Zara's having dinner with us, right, Dad? Nikolai looked at me, the question implied. If it's not too much to ask, I said. You live here. His voice was neutral. It's not intrusive, and so for the first time, I dined at the Aristov family table. The dining room was less formal than I had expected. A dark wood table that would easily seat 12 people, but only 3 places were set, 1 at the head, 2 to the side. Sasha positioned herself in the seat to Nikolai's right, the space clearly adapted for her chair. I sat facing him. The food was simple but delicious. Roast chicken, vegetables, rice. Nothing of the ostentatious nature I associated with obscene wealth. You don't eat like a rich person, I commented before I could reprimand myself. Nikolai raised an eyebrow. And how do rich people eat? Caviar, truffles, things that normal people can't pronounce. I grew up poor. He cut a piece of chicken. Simple food reminds me of where I came from. The revelation surprised me. I had assumed, well, that he had always been like that. Powerful, untouchable. Poor where? Russia. A village that probably doesn't even exist on maps anymore. He didn't look at me as he spoke. My father worked in a factory until he died of pneumonia when I was 12. My mother sewed clothes for neighbors until her fingers bled. And how did you? I gestured vaguely to indicate the mansion around me. I left Russia at 16. I worked in docks, construction, anything that paid. I met the right people, or the wrong ones, depending on your perspective. He finally looked at me. I discovered I was good at solving problems that other people didn't want to solve. What kind of problems? The silence that followed was heavy, the kind you don't want to know the details about. Fair. Dad built everything himself, Sasha said, pride evident in her voice. Before I was born, he had nothing. Now he has everything. Not everything. Nikolai's voice was soft, but enough. The look he gave his son clearly stated what was enough for him. And you, Zara? Nikolai redirected the attention. How did you grow up? The question made me instinctively recoil. Normal, middle class. My parents are still married and live in São Paulo. I have an older sister who is a lawyer. Do they know where you are? The knot in my stomach tightened. They know I'm alive. I send a message once a month from a public phone. But he doesn't know where you live, that you were on the streets. It wasn't a question. They tried to help, I said, my voice more defensive than I intended. After the accident, but I wouldn't let them. I couldn't. I stopped, the words catching in my throat. I couldn't accept that I needed help, Nikolai added. I looked at him, surprised by his accuracy. Yes, I recognized the pattern. He took a sip of wine. Wounded pride turns help into humiliation. Refusal becomes more important than survival. Speaking from experience? Always. Another moment of silent recognition. 2 people broken in different ways, but fluent in the same language of destruction and reconstruction. You 2 look alike, Sasha observed, glancing from one to the other. You both make that, I'm not going to talk about it face, but you actually want to talk. Since when are you a psychologist? Nikolai asked, but there was humor in his voice. Always. Sasha shrugged. I observe. It's what I do when I can't run around. The observation was so accurate it hurt. The rest of the dinner passed in lighter conversation. Sasha dominated most of it, talking about his studies, a book he was reading, a bird he had seen from the window. Nikolai listened with genuine attention, asking questions, responding to his son's digressions with infinite patience. It was disconcerting to see the czar of the dark harbor underworld simply be a father. After Sasha was taken away to get ready for bed, by me, not by staff, a change Nikolai had accepted without comment, I met the man in the library. He was standing by the window, a glass of whiskey in his hand, looking at the city lights below. "May I come in?" I asked from the doorway. "You live here. You don't need to ask permission." I entered, stopping at a safe distance. "Sasha is asleep. It took a while," he said, excited about dinner. Nikolai did not turn around. "He likes you. I like him. It's more than just liking him." He finally looked at me. "He trusts you." "Sasha doesn't trust anyone but me. Perhaps he just needed someone who wasn't afraid to treat him normally. Maybe." He took a sip of his whiskey. "Or maybe he'll recognize something in you." "What?" The icy eyes studied me. "You lost everything and kept standing. He's losing everything little by little and trying to keep standing. You speak the same language." The realization hit me like an electric current. "You planned this," I said, the realization setting in. "You didn't hire me just because I saved him. You researched my background, saw the parallels. I saw a woman who had every reason to give up and she didn't." He put the glass down on the table. "My son needs to see that it's possible to keep going, even when the world tells you to stop. What if I'm not a good example? What if I'm a fraud? You lived on the streets for 3 years and jumped into a frozen lake to save a stranger." He took a step toward me. "Frauds don't do that." His proximity was disconcerting. He was so present, so solid, so impossible to ignore. "Why do you care so much?" I asked, and the question came out more vulnerable than I intended. "About what Sasha thinks, about how he feels. You could just hire people and let them take care of it. But you're here, every night, because he is my son." Many wealthy parents outsource the raising of their children. Many wealthy fathers did not see their wives die because of their sins. The air left the room. "Nikolai." My wife's name was Irina. His voice was flat, controlled, but I could hear the cracks. She was a teacher. She had nothing to do with my world. I met her in a coffee shop. Can you believe it? She accidentally spilled coffee on me and spent the next 10 minutes cursing me in Russian because I'd ruined her day. Despite the gravity of the moment, I almost smiled. "She sounds wonderful." It was. A pause. She knew who I was, what I did, and she loved me anyway. She said that everyone deserves someone who sees beyond the shadows. What happened to her? The silence stretched on for so long that I thought he wasn't going to answer. A rival, someone who wanted to get to me. His jaw clenched. "They planted a bomb in our car. She was taking Sasha to physical therapy. The bomb detonated before they got into the vehicle, so Sasha survived. Irina was closer. He didn't finish. It wasn't necessary." "Did Sasha see?" I asked, dreading the answer. "He saw his mother die 3 meters away from him." Nikolai's voice was pure ice. He was 4 years old. He doesn't talk about it. He never has. But I know he remembers, because every time he hears a noise that's too loud, he freezes. I closed my eyes. The image was too horrible to behold. The man who did this, he's dead. There was no satisfaction in his voice, just fact. He and everyone who helped him. It took 2 years to find them all, but I found them. It should have scared me. The coldness with which he spoke of revenge, of death, of destruction. Instead, I understood. If someone had killed Beatrice, my sister, if I had had one, I would have done the same. Anyone would have. That's why security is so tight, I said. It's not just paranoia. It's not paranoia at all. He looked at me. It's experience. I have enemies. I always will. And they all know that Sasha is my only weakness. He is not weak. The words came out before I could even think them. His icy eyes narrowed. "No? No." I held his gaze. "He's the reason you keep going. The reason you built all of this. The reason you get up every day. The reason you didn't just give up. That's not weakness. It's an anchor." Something changed in Nikolai's face. An almost imperceptible softening. A slip in the armor. "You're dangerous, Zara Marais," he said quietly. "Why?" "Because you see too much." We remained silent, the tension in the air almost palpable. "I should go to sleep," he said finally, taking a step back. "Sasha has physical therapy tomorrow at 8. "Okay." I also stepped back, grateful for the exit. "Good night, Nikolai." "Good evening, Zara." I left the library with my heart pounding, my skin tingling where his eyes had touched me. What the hell was happening to me? That night, I dreamed of water. Not the lake at Porto Escuro, but the Olympic-sized swimming pool. The smell of chlorine. The impossible blue. The roar of the crowd that always fell silent the moment I dove in. I dreamt about the accident too. The car coming towards me. Lucas's scream, my coach, my second father, before the impact. The sound of metal against metal, of shattering glass, of breaking bones. And I dreamt of Marcos, my fiancé, my partner of 8 years, the man I loved more than I loved swimming. "I can't take it anymore, Zara," he had said from the hospital bed where he would spend the rest of his life. "You look at me and see what we've lost. I can't be a constant reminder of your pain. I love you," I had replied. "I know, but love isn't enough." "Not when every look is an accusation. I never blame you." "No? You blamed yourself, which is worse." I woke up with tears streaming down my face and Marcos's name on my lips. I sat up in bed, hugging my knees, trying to catch my breath. The room was dark, luxurious, completely different from anywhere I had slept in the last 3 years. But the pain was the same. Some wounds don't heal with time or distance. They just stay. Permanent parts of who you are. Scar tissue you learn to hide but never forget. A soft knock on the door made me freeze. "Zara?" Sasha's voice, muffled by the wood. I got up, quickly wiping my face, and opened the door. He was there, in the chair, in his pajamas, his eyes swollen with sleep but worried. "What happened?" I asked, bending down. "Are you okay?" "I heard you," he said softly. "You were making sad noises, just like I do sometimes." My heart tightened in my chest. "Sorry if I woke you up." He didn't wake up. He looked away. I wasn't sleeping either. I understood immediately. "Nightmares?" He nodded. "Do you want to come in?" I asked. "We might not sleep together." The ghost of a smile crossed his face. "Yes." He came into my room, and I sat on the floor next to his chair. We lay in silence for a moment, 2 insomniacs sharing the darkness. "What do you dream about?" he finally asked. "With the accident, with the people I lost." I looked at him. "And you?" "With the noise." His voice was small. "The explosion. And with my mother afterwards. She was—" He swallowed. "She was on the ground and wouldn't move, and I tried to go to her, but my legs wouldn't work, and all I could do was scream." The tears came without warning, mine and his. "Hey," I said, taking his hand. "Look at me." He looked, his brown eyes swimming around. "You were 4 years old. There was nothing you could have done." "I know. Knowing and feeling are different things. I know that too." A tear rolled down his face. "But my head doesn't listen." "Mine isn't either." I shook his hand. "I guess heads are just stubborn like that." He almost laughed, a wet and sad sound. "Zara? Try? Can you stay with me until I fall asleep?" The question tore me apart and rebuilt me at the same time. "Sure, kid. I'll stay." I helped him move into my bed, a process he insisted on doing almost entirely on his own. I lay down beside him, keeping a respectful distance, but close enough for him to know I was there. "My mother used to sing," he murmured, already half asleep, "when I had nightmares. A Russian song. I don't remember the lyrics, just the melody." He hummed a few notes, out of tune and imperfect and absolutely devastating. And without thinking, I continued. "Not the Russian song. I didn't know it. But a lullaby that my own mother used to sing. Portuguese instead of Russian. But the effect was the same." Sasha fell asleep within minutes. I stayed awake for much longer, watching over the sleep of a child who wasn't mine, but who, somehow, was becoming everything to me. 2 months, 63 days, 1,512 hours. It was during my time at the Aristov mansion that each second had transformed me into someone I barely recognized. The woman who had jumped into that lake was a ghost. Too thin, too empty, too resigned. The woman I saw in the mirror now had color in her cheeks, muscles returning to her arms, and something in her eyes that looked dangerously hopeful. Sasha was responsible for a large part of it. He was impossible to ignore, impossible not to love. His stubbornness drove me crazy. His intelligence challenged me, and his courage humbled me daily. That boy faced each day, knowing that his body was slowly betraying him, and yet he woke up with plans, with questions, with a hunger for life that shamed me. "You're looking at me again," he said one afternoon, without lifting his eyes from the jigsaw puzzle we were putting together. "I'm admiring your concentration. He's thinking about how inspiring I am or something." He finally looked at me, rolling his eyes. "Everyone does that. That look how strong he is despite everything face." "Actually, I was thinking about how bossy you are. You organized the pieces by color without asking me, because organizing by color is obviously more efficient. Obviously, I repeated sarcastically. Yeah, obviously. He smiled, that smile I'd learned to draw from him like someone panning for gold. You were making that face, yes. Maybe a little. You knew. We returned to the puzzle in comfortable silence. It was a scene of the ocean. Waves crashing against rocks, white foam, an impossibly blue sky. Do you miss him? Sasha asked suddenly. Of what? From the water. From swimming. The question caught me off guard, as always happened when he aimed directly at my blind spot. Every day, I replied honestly. But you can swim. Your legs work now. They work, but not like before. I put a piece back in place. And swimming competitively is different from swimming for fun. My body remembers the movements, but it can no longer execute them at the level I've trained my whole life to achieve. So you can't swim at all because you can't swim perfectly? The devastating simplicity of the question made me stop. When you put it like that, is he an idiot? Sasha. It's stupid, Zara. He looked at me with that childlike seriousness that knows he's right. I'll never be able to walk again. Like never. But if my legs worked even a little bit, even if not perfectly, I'd use every second of it. The silence that followed was deafening. You're right, I finally said. I know. No arrogance, just a fact. We have a pool, you know? In the East Wing. Dad had it built for my aquatic physiotherapy. I know. I saw it. But you've never been there. No. Why? Why? Because getting into a pool meant confronting everything I had lost. It meant feeling the water and remembering who I used to be. It meant admitting that that part of me still existed, buried under layers of trauma and grief, fear, I replied. Because Sasha deserved honesty. He nodded, as if it made perfect sense. Fear is annoying, he said. But sometimes we need to do things even when we're afraid. That's what you told me when I didn't want to try the new exercise in physical therapy. I'm being defeated by my own logic. Yes, you are, he smiled. Will you go swimming with me tomorrow? Sasha. Aquatic physiotherapy. You can help me. And at the same time, I don't know. Remember that water is not the enemy. I looked at that boy, 8 years old, confined to a chair, facing an illness that would take everything from him. And I felt ashamed of my own cowardice. Okay, I said. Tomorrow. The smile he flashed could light up the entire city. The pool was smaller than the Olympic pools where I had spent half my life, but perfectly adequate for physiotherapy. Heated water, grab bars on the sides, gradual depth. I was standing on the edge, in my swimsuit, borrowed from some employee locker, my heart pounding so hard it was probably audible. You're making that face again, Sasha said. He was already in the water, supported by a special buoy that kept his body afloat. The scared face. I'm in control. It does not seem. Sasha, I'm just saying. I took a deep breath. The water shimmered under the lights, inviting and terrifying at the same time. Do you know the last time I went into a swimming pool? I asked. When? 6 months before the accident. I was training for the Olympics. I did my personal best time. I got out of the water thinking the gold was guaranteed. And then, 3 weeks later, a drunk ran a red light, and I never went into a swimming pool again. Sasha was silent for a moment. So this water is like the last good thing before everything goes bad? Sometimes his perception scared me. Yes, but it could also be the first good thing after everything has gone bad, he said. It depends on how you look at it. I closed my eyes. I smelled the chlorine. Weak, but present. I heard the soft sound of the water moving, and I jumped. The impact was chilling for a fraction of a second before the warming took hold. The water enveloped me like an old, familiar, longed-for embrace. My body remembered. Every muscle, every nerve, every cell knew exactly what to do. Emoji emerged breathless, not from exertion, but from emotion. So? Sasha asked anxiously. Tears mingled with the pool water. It's like coming home, I whispered. He smiled, pleased with himself. I said. We spent the next hour in the water. I helped Sasha with her physical therapy exercises, gentle movements to maintain joint range of motion, light resistance to slow atrophy, and between sets, I swam. It wasn't the competitive swimming of before. It was slower, less precise, imperfect in 1,000 ways that the Zara of old would have scorned. But it was swimming. It was the water holding me, moving me, reminding me of who I was before I forgot. You're beautiful when you're swimming, Sasha said at some point. It looks like you belong in the water. I belonged. Maybe I still belong a little. You belong, he corrected. I'd just forgotten. We didn't realize we were being watched until a voice interrupted us. I didn't know you were here. I turned around so fast I almost swallowed water. Nikolai was standing on the edge of the pool, still in his suit. Why was he always in a suit? His eyes fixed on us. Or more precisely on me. I was wearing a swimsuit, in the water, with my hair stuck to my face and probably looking like a drowned rat. Wonder. Daddy! Sasha waved. Zara's swimming. She hadn't swum in years and I convinced her. Nikolai's gaze met mine, and something about him took my breath away. I saw her, he said quietly. I saw her swimming. There was something in his voice that I couldn't quite put my finger on. It wasn't disapproval. It was almost reverence. How long have you been there? I asked. Enough time. He didn't elaborate, and I didn't press him. I'm going to take Sasha out of the water, I said, swimming toward the boy. It's past his time. It didn't pass, Sasha protested. Yes, it passed. The skin on your hands is wrinkled. That doesn't mean anything. That means you've been in the water for more than an hour. I looked at Nikolai. Could you ask someone to bring the aquatic chair? He nodded and left, giving me privacy to help Sasha out of the pool. The process was laborious. Transferring an uncooperative body from the water to a chair required technique and patience, but we had already developed a routine. When Nikolai returned with the chair and a towel, Sasha was already out of the water, wrapped in his own bathrobe. Thank you, I said, accepting the towel. He didn't answer. He just watched me dry my face, arms, and legs. You still swim like an athlete, he said finally. You haven't seen me before. This is a shadow of what I was capable of. It's still impressive. The heat rose up my neck. Daddy, Sasha interrupted, a mischievous smile on her face. You're making Zara blush. Sasha, I hissed. What? That's true. Nikolai looked from his son to me, and something akin to amusement crossed his eyes. Go get changed, Sasha, he said. Victor is waiting to take you to the doctor. But now, Sasha sighed dramatically. 8 years condensed into pure teenage exasperation, but obeyed, maneuvering the chair toward the exit. See you at dinner, Zara, he called over his shoulder. And you promised we'd go swimming again tomorrow. I know. The door closed behind him, and suddenly I was alone with Nikolai, in my swimsuit, dripping water onto the marble floor. The silence was deafening. I gestured vaguely toward the locker room. He is happy. The statement made me stop and think. What? Sasha. Nikolai took a step toward me. In the 2 months since you arrived, he's been happier than he's been at any point since Irina died. He's an easy child to love. He's an impossible child to reach. Another step. Everyone who tried to get close to him was pushed away. But you just walked in, as if you belonged. I didn't do anything special. You made everything special. He was too close now. Close enough for me to see the details of his eyes. Not just ice blue, but with darker veins near the pupils. You treated him like a person, not like a patient or the son of someone dangerous. You challenged him, argued with him, made him laugh. It's my job. No. His voice was low and intense. Your job is to take care of him. What you do goes far beyond a job. My heart was beating so hard he could probably hear it. Nikolai, I should keep my distance. He didn't back down. You're an employee. It's a conflict of interest. It's a complication I don't need. So keep your distance. I try. His eyes drifted down to my mouth for a split second. I try every day. The air between us was electric, charged with something that had been building for weeks, perhaps since the first moment we looked at each other by the edge of that lake. That's a bad idea, I whispered. Terrible. It's going to complicate everything. Completely. Sasha adores you. He raised his hand, touching my face, his fingers tracing the line of my jaw. It's the only reason I haven't done it yet. Done what? Instead of answering, he kissed me. It wasn't a gentle kiss. It was hunger. Months of pent-up tension exploding in a single point of contact. His hands found my waist, pulling me against him, completely ignoring the fact that I was soaked and he was in a suit. I should have backed down. I should have been the rational person, the one who thought about the consequences. Instead, my hands found his shoulders, then his neck, then his hair. I kissed him back with the same hunger, the same urgency, the same desperate need for connection. When we finally parted, both breathless, he rested his forehead against mine. That's a bad idea, I added. The best bad idea I've ever had. A laugh escaped me, half hysterical. What do we do now? Now? He took a step back, his eyes still too intense. Now you're going to change, because you're shivering from the cold, and I can't think straight with you like this. I looked down and realized he was right. My skin was covered in goosebumps, my lips probably purple. And then what? We'll talk later. He stroked my face one last time. About what this means. About Sasha. About everything. I nodded, still trembling, not just from the cold. Go, he said, stepping back further. Before I change my mind about letting you go. I went, but the warmth of his lips lingered with me long after the hot shower water should have erased any sensation. The conversation never happened. 3 hours later, the world fell apart. I was in my room, getting ready for dinner, when I heard the commotion. Footsteps rushing down the hallway, urgent voices in Russian, the sound of doors slamming. Instinct made me run before my brain could process the information. I found Victor in the hallway, his face pale. What happened? I asked. Sasha. The word came out choked. At the doctor's office. He fainted and isn't waking up. The ground disappeared beneath my feet. I ran. I don't know how I found my way. The mansion was a labyrinth, and I didn't yet know every corner. But something guided me to the medical wing. The scene I encountered devastated me. Sasha was on a stretcher, unconscious, his face as pale as wax. Doctors and nurses moved around him with controlled urgency, connecting monitors, checking vital signs, shouting terms I didn't understand. Oh, Nikolai. Nikolai stood in a corner, completely still, his eyes fixed on his son. The mask of control had vanished. In its place, there was only terror. What happened? I asked the nearest doctor. Cardiac crisis. The answer was short and professional. The dystrophy is affecting the heart muscle faster than we anticipated. We are stabilizing it. Will he be okay? The doctor didn't answer. That was answer enough. I crossed the room to Nikolai, stopping beside him. Hey, I said quietly. He didn't answer. I'm not sure he heard me. Nikolai, I touched his arm. Look at me. Finally, those icy eyes met mine. But there was no ice in them now. There was fire, pain, absolute panic. He's all I have, he whispered. If I lose him, you're not going to lose. I squeezed his arm. He's strong, stubborn like his father. He'll fight. And what if that's not enough? So we fight him. Something in his face changed. The crumbling wall found support, a point of stability. Stay with me, he pleaded, his voice breaking. I'm not going anywhere. The following hours were the longest of my life. Sasha was stabilized, but remained unconscious. Doctors spoke of the next 48 critical hours, of significant cardiac damage, and of aggressive treatment adjustments. Nikolai didn't leave his side of the bed at any point. Neither did I. Sometime in the early morning, sitting side by side in uncomfortable chairs, he began to speak. When the doctors diagnosed Sasha, he was 2 years old. His voice was hoarse with exhaustion. Irina cried for a week. I didn't cry. I planned. I researched every doctor, every treatment, every clinical trial in the world. I told myself that money could solve anything. And it doesn't solve anything. It solves a lot of things. It doesn't solve this. He looked at his son, so small in the hospital bed. Money buys the best doctors, the best equipment, the best comfort, but it doesn't buy a cure. It doesn't buy time. Sasha knows that. I thought about our conversations, the painful wisdom in his eyes. He understands more than you realize. I know. It's what destroys me the most. Nikolai closed his eyes. He shouldn't have to understand. He should be worried about video games and homework, not how much time he has left to live. But he is, and he's coping, in his own way, with stubbornness and courage and terrible jokes. A sound escaped Nikolai, half laughter, half a sob. The jokes are terrible, horrible. He told me one about a duck last week that was so bad I almost quit my job. The one about the duck that went to the doctor? That's the one. He's been telling this story for 3 years, and she still finds it funny. Irina thought it was funny. His voice trailed off. She laughed every time, even after the 100th. She said his joy in telling the story was better than any punchline. She sounds like an amazing person. It was. He finally looked at me. You remind me of her sometimes. You? The way you look at Sasha. As if he were the most important thing in the world. Irina looked at him like that. The weight of those words hit me hard. He's important to me, I said. More than I expected when I accepted this job. Is that all that's important? I looked at Sasha, unconscious, breathing with the help of machines. I love him, I admitted, the words escaping before I could catch them. Not as a substitute for anything. Not as work. Not as an obligation. I love him because he is Sasha. Irritating, brilliant, brave, impossible Sasha. When I looked back at Nikolai, there were tears in his eyes. He loves you too, he said. He told me last week. He said you were the best thing that had happened to him since Mom, that he wanted you to stay forever. The tears came without warning. I'm not going anywhere. Even if he doesn't get better? Nikolai's voice was harsh. Even if this is the beginning of the end? You didn't sign up for that. I didn't sign for any of this. I took his hand. But here I am, and here I'll stay, no matter what happens. He squeezed my hand with a force that bordered on pain. You're too real, he whispered. Sometimes I think I invented you. I am real, and I'm not going to disappear. We stayed silent, hands intertwined, watching over the sleep of a child who was the center of both our universes. Sasha woke up at dawn. First came a movement of the fingers, then a low moan, and then, slowly, the brown eyes opened. Dad? The voice was a whisper, hoarse and weak. Nikolai was on his feet before I could blink, his hands wrapped around his son's. I'm here. I'm right here. What happened? Sasha tried to move, grimacing. Why does it hurt? You had a crisis. Nikolai's voice trembled. But you'll be okay. You'll be okay. Sasha's eyes wandered around the room until they found me. Zara? He seemed confused. Are you crying? I quickly wiped my face clean. That's a allergy. Lie. Even weak, he managed to roll his eyes. You're crying because you were worried about me. Maybe a little. More than a little. Okay, great. You scared me, kid. He smiled. Weakly, but genuinely. Sorry. Don't apologize, just... My voice cracked. Just don't do it again. I am going to try. The medical team then entered, surrounding the bed, performing examinations, checking monitors. Nikolai and I were gently pushed aside. At the door, he took my hand again. Thank you, he said softly, for staying, for everything. I said I wasn't going anywhere. I know. He brought my hand to my lips, an old-fashioned gesture that should have felt awkward but seemed perfectly natural. And I'll make sure you never have a reason to change your mind. It took Sasha weeks to recover from the crisis. Physically, he stabilized faster than doctors had expected. His heart responded to the new medications. Tests showed a slight improvement, and the machines surrounding him were removed one by one. But something had changed. The abstract idea that his time was limited had become real, tangible. He had touched the abyss and returned, and now he saw the world with different eyes. I have an expiration date, he said one afternoon, months later, as we watched the sunset from the terrace, like those yogurts the kitchen buys. Don't compare my favorite child to dairy products, I replied, but my smile was weak. You know what I meant. I know, I sighed, but an expiration date isn't an execution date. It's an estimate. It could be right, it could be wrong. Doctors are usually right. Doctors are generally cautious. They prefer to err on the side of less than to overpromise. He looked at me, assessing me. How long do you think I'll live? The question hit me like a punch. I don't know. My honesty deserved it. Nobody knows. It could be years. It could be decades. It could be less than we want. Years are not decades, but they may be enough to make it worthwhile. What to do? To live. I looked at the orange-tinged horizon. You don't control the length of your life, Sasha, but you control its depth. He frowned. Depth? Some people live 80 years on the surface, without truly loving, without taking risks, without knowing themselves. And then there are people who live 10 years deep down, loving until it hurts, laughing until they're breathless, throwing themselves into everything. She smiled slightly. I think I know which type you are. He considered this for a moment. I want the bottom, he finally said. I know. I touched his shoulder. And I'll be with you on every dive, okay? He nodded, accepting it as a promise. My relationship with Nikolai also deepened more each day. There was no official request, no dramatic speech. The change happened in small gestures. An extra toothbrush in his bathroom, my clothes taking up half the closet. The way, at some point, sleeping in my bed or my old room stopped making sense. You live here now, he said one night, as if stating the obvious. I work here, I corrected. You live here, he repeated, moving closer. Working is only part of it. It was true. My days revolved around that house, that family that wasn't mine on paper, but had become everything that mattered. And you? I asked. Do you live here or just pass through? Before, I was just passing through. He touched my chin, lifting my face to meet his eyes. Since you arrived, I've been living. The simplicity of the statement disarmed me. I kissed him. Less urgency, more certainty. The kind of kiss that doesn't begin with a storm, but continues calmly. You realize you're being sentimental sometimes, right? I murmured against his lips. I learned from you. That's a lie. You're a secret romantic. If you tell anyone, I'll fire you. Then you'll have to cook your own food. He considered it. Emotional blackmail. Admirable. We laughed together, our laughter blending together in a way that I could no longer separate them. The conversation with Sasha about us was as straightforward as everything else about him. I was helping him with his homework when he put down his pencil and stared at me. So, are you two going to get married or what? I almost choked. What? You and Dad. He gestured with his good hand. Do you think I don't see? You look at each other too much. You get too close. You keep making that weird silence with your eyes. An odd silence with your eyes? I repeated, laughing. You know what I'm talking about. I sighed. Yes, we're together. But marriage is a different story. You two should get married. Why the rush? Because it's harder to send you away if you two get married. The low blow took my breath away. Sasha, I know you said you weren't going anywhere. He looked at the table. But my mother also said she was going to stay forever. And then, the raw pain in his voice cut me to the bone. Hey, I held his chin, forcing him to look at me. I can't promise that nothing bad will ever happen. Nobody can. But I can promise one thing. What? If I leave, it won't be my choice. It will be because something much bigger took me there. But as long as I have a choice, I choose to stay. He studied me, assessing the solidity of the promise. And what about Dad? What's wrong with him? Do you like him? The question was childish in form, but adult in weight. Silence. I love him, I finally replied, in a way that scares me, in a way that makes me want to punch him and hug him at the same time. Sasha smiled. Me too, just like you. Then marry him. He shrugged. That makes sense. I'll think about your request. It's not a request. Skipping steps, little mobster. It's an order. The apple doesn't fall far from the tree. I dare say he was proud of the phrase. The actual request came in an anticlimactic way. We were in the kitchen one night, just the three of us. Sasha and I were arguing about who would do the dishes. He insisted on helping. I insisted he'd already done too much. When Nikolai came in, opened a drawer, took out a ring, and placed it in front of me on the counter. Will you marry me? He asked, as if offering more salt. I was paralyzed. Is that how it is? I asked. No kneeling, no speech, nothing. I can kneel if you want. He actually started to lower himself. No. I grabbed his arm. You'll ruin your pants. Then, I looked at the ring. Simple, elegant, nothing extravagant. I looked at Sasha, who was vibrating in her chair, her eyes wide with expectation. I looked at the man who had been my fear, my boss, my unlikely safe haven. Of course, I replied. Of course. Sasha celebrated with a shout that was probably heard halfway through the mansion. Does this mean I can call Zara Mom now? She yelled. The world stopped for a second. My eyes automatically went to Nikolai. There was something about them. A tightness, a shadow. That's not mandatory, I hastened to say. Your father and I are getting married, but you can call me whatever you want, whatever feels comfortable. Sasha looked at me as if I had said the stupidest thing in the world. I've been calling you Mom in my head for months, she said. I was just waiting for an excuse. My legs almost gave way. Sasha, I remember my mother, he continued, his voice painfully serious. Not very well, but I remember. I don't want to replace her. You can't replace a mother, but you can have two. One who brought me into the world, and another who taught me how to stay in it. The tears came without resistance. My voice trailed off. I swallowed. I can be your second mother, if you want. He rolled his eyes. There's no number. You're different. Mama Irina was the beginning. You're the rest. Nikolai didn't speak. I was afraid to look at him. So? Sasha insisted. Can I call you Mom or not? You can. And I couldn't say anything else. He smiled. Broad, genuine, devastating, and opened his arms as wide as his body allowed. I leaned in, hugging him carefully, afraid of breaking him and wanting to never let him go again. Looking over his head, I finally faced Nikolai. He was crying, silently, without drama, just tears streaming down the face of a man who had seen and caused horrors, but was still vulnerable to the simplest thing in the world. Love, thank you, he whispered, his voice breaking. Forgiving this to him, forgiving this to me. I could only shake my head. There weren't enough words. Of course, life wouldn't leave us in peace for very long. A week before the wedding, the threat returned. It wasn't dramatic like an explosion or a cinematic kidnapping. It was a phone call. I was at the market with Victor, buying ingredients because I had stubbornly decided to cook something Brazilian for dinner when his cell phone rang. He looked at the number, turned pale, and answered immediately. Yes. Silence. Then, understood. He hung up and turned to me. We need to go back. Now. What happened? Someone hacked into the mansion's security system. They left a message. What kind of message? A video, his jaw clenched, of Sasha at the park, on the day at the lake. My blood ran cold. That could mean anything. I tried to rationalize. Sometimes lunatics don't hack systems like Mr. Aristov's. His pace quickened even more. And they don't choose that specific video. The rest of the way was a blur. Back at the mansion, the atmosphere was different. Tense. Men I normally saw relaxed, conversing in Russian, were now rigid, their hands close to their weapons, their eyes scanning every corner. I found Nikolai in the control room, a room I had only glimpsed before, filled with monitors displaying every angle of the property. On the main screen, frozen, was an image of Sasha on the pier, seconds before the fall. The video itself is ours, he said without preamble. The park's cameras captured it. The problem is the caption. Below the video, in white letters, was a phrase, "You can't protect it forever." I felt nauseous. Who sent this? We don't know yet, he said, indicating a technician crouching in front of a CPU. The tracking is sophisticated, but we'll find it. It's someone who knows where Sasha has been, I said, and who he is. This isn't a random threat. No. Nikolai's eyes were solid ice. That's someone trying to remind me that they can catch up to him. What are you going to do? What I always do. The answer came like a snap. Find, neutralize, exterminate. I should have been frightened. Instead, I felt something close to relief. The wolf had woken up. And Sasha? I asked. You won't know about that. He's smart. He'll sense the tension. You'll notice less if you and I seem normal. The implied responsibility hit me. You want me to maintain his routine. I want you to be the anchor. He looked at me. While I become the storm. And you promise you won't get involved in a war that puts him at greater risk? I promise that everything I do thinking of him. It wasn't the answer I wanted, but it was the one he had. In the days that followed, the already intense security transformed into an absolute fortress. No exit was allowed without triple escort. No one entered the mansion without multiple checks. Evacuation protocols were rehearsed like choreography. Sasha noticed, of course. What's going on? He asked, after seeing 3 armed men watching a simple stroll through the garden. Preventive measures, I replied, recycling the phrase Nikolai had given me. Sometimes the world outside gets noisier. We're just putting on soundproofing. He narrowed his eyes. Is it because of Dad? Sometimes your father's things get backfired. I sighed. I'm not going to lie. Some people don't like him, and people who don't like him sometimes make stupid decisions. But he's coping. He's dealing with it. What if one day he can't do it? The raw fear in his voice destroyed me. We'll deal with that too. I touched his face. Together. He considered that. I trust you. Trust your father too. I trust him. A pause. But he's not very good at hiding when he's scared. She smiled, but without humor. In that respect, you two are definitely father and son. The threat was neutralized in less than 2 weeks. I don't know how. I don't know who. I don't know what was done. All I know is that one night I found Nikolai sitting in the library without a suit, with an almost empty bottle of vodka on the table. Is it over? I asked. For now. He looked up. There's no more video. There's no more sender. There's no more immediate risk. And you? Me what? Are you all right? He considered the question. More than most. Less than I would like. I sat down next to him, taking the glass from his hands. You can't kill yourself with every threat. That's not how it works in my world. Perhaps your world needs to change. He laughed, but without humor. You think I don't try? He looked at the bottle. Every deal I leave creates a vacuum. Others fill it. Worse than me. More careless. Less selective. So what's the solution? Finding a way to keep what protects my son and get rid of what puts him at risk. He sighed. I haven't figured out how yet. I touched her hand. You're trying. That's already more than many would do. He turned his hand and intertwined his fingers with mine. You could have chosen an easier life, Zara. I wouldn't have included you and Sasha. Exactly. I prefer this one. He looked at me as if I were something sacred and incomprehensible. You are the bravest and most stubborn person I have ever met. Look who's talking." He really laughed this time. "She deserves better than me. I deserve exactly who I chose." I leaned in and kissed him. "And I chose you." He closed his eyes for a moment, as if letting the words in. "Then stay." The voice was almost a plea. "Even when it gets difficult. Even when I make mistakes. I will make mistakes." "Me too." I rested my forehead against his. "But you learn. Like swimming. First you sink, swallow water, then you learn to float. What if the lake is too deep? So we'll bring a life buoy." He chuckled softly. "You can turn even my darkest fears into a horrible joke. The influence of your son. They are both a bad influence, and you love it. I love it." The wedding was discreet. No headlines, no social event. Just a small ceremony in the mansion's inner garden, under a pergola covered in white flowers. A few of Nikolai's trusted men, 2 employees who had been at the house since before Sasha was born, and Victor, who insisted on wearing a suit and couldn't hide his tears for a moment. Sasha was the center of everything. He handed over the rings, joked, cried, laughed, and, at the moment of the vows, interrupted the priest. "Can I speak too?" he asked. "I'm part of this." No one dared to say no. He looked at the 2 of us, at his father in a dark suit, at me in a dress that wasn't over the top, but made me feel beautiful in a way I hadn't felt in years. "When Mom Irina died," she began, her voice trembling slightly, "I thought it was over, that it wasn't possible to be truly happy anymore, only half happy sometimes." She took a deep breath. "And then Dad brought Zara home." She smiled. "Without asking me, which was kind of rude, but it worked." Soft laughter echoed around them. "She saw me, really. She treated me like a person, not like a disease. She jumped into the lake to save me, which was stupid, but nice. She taught me how to swim without using my legs. She taught me that I can be deep, even if I'm not long." She looked at me, and then she started looking at my dad with that face. "What guy?" I managed to ask, swallowing back tears. "That you're complicated, but I'll love you anyway. Look on your face." He rolled his eyes. "She has terrible taste." Everyone laughed, even Nikolai. "Today I have 2 mothers and a father who isn't as annoying as he pretends to be." Sasha's voice turned serious. "I know I might not live as long as you, but I also know that the time I have will be full. Of love, of scolding, of people yelling at me not to do dangerous things." She smiled. "And that's enough." There wasn't a dry eye in the garden. He concluded. "So in the name of the child of this house, I accept this marriage." The priest, with tears in his own eyes, simply nodded. When we exchanged rings, I thought of the lake, of the sound of the chair hitting the water, of the silence of the crowd, of my body jumping before my brain could even process it. I thought of Zara dying under an awning, of the former swimmer who had forgotten how to breathe, of the woman I was now, wife, mother, caregiver, survivor, and for the first time, I understood. It was no coincidence that I was in that park that day. It had been a turning point. Months later, on an ordinary day, we were in the same park. Security was tripled. The lake now had higher fences and more pronounced signage. Sasha looked at the water with an expression that mixed respect and defiance. "Funny," he said. "I almost died here. Yes, thank you for reminding me. But I was almost born again too." He looked at me. "And so were you." "Yes." I grabbed his chair from behind, pushing him slowly along the path. "We were reborn here. Do you regret it?" he asked, jumping. I looked at the boy in the chair, my son, even without blood ties. I looked at the man nearby, talking on the phone, but with his eyes always returning to us. My husband, my unlikely home. Not for a second. Sasha smiled, that smile that was still a miracle every time. Me either. We stood in silence, watching the late afternoon light dance on the surface of the lake. I remembered the static crowd, the world paralyzed by fear, the simple choice of moving my body when everyone else froze. I remembered the cold water, the weight of the chair, the brown eyes opening for me for the first time. And I thought, sometimes life pushes you toward the lake. Sometimes you jump. And sometimes, when you think you're drowning, you discover you were just learning a new way to swim. "Mom?" Sasha called me. My heart always warmed at that word. "Yes, love. Shall we go for a swim when we get home?" Smile. "Let's go." I gained momentum, pushing the chair a little faster, making him laugh. The Mafia boss watched us from afar, with an expression only Sasha and I knew, that of a man who had seen hell, built a kingdom in the shadows, and against all odds, found light in a frozen lake, and in two people stubborn enough to love him back. And for the first time, without fear, without doubt, without hesitation, I knew the daughter of the water had chosen her place, next to the boy by the lake. And from the man who had learned, late but in time, that the most dangerous power in the world is not fear, it's love.